The moment the security guard placed his hand on my shoulder and said, "Mr. Thompson, you need to leave the premises," something inside me shattered like glass under a hammer. I stood there in the lobby of the building I'd helped design, staring at my own reflection in the polished marble floor, and felt the world tilt beneath my feet. My name is Alex Thompson. 10 years ago, Mark Riley and I were two broke college kids, sharing instant noodles in a cramped garage, dreaming of changing the world with code. We promised each other everything: loyalty, transparency, brotherhood. We shook on it over cheap beer and laughed about how we'd never become the soulless corporate types we despised. That promise carried us through sleepless nights, failed prototypes, and the day our app finally hit 1 million downloads. It carried us all the way to a $100 million valuation and a sleek office in the heart of Silicon Valley. I built that company with my own hands. Every line of code, every pitch deck, every all-nighter, it was mine as much as it was his. Or so I thought. That morning started like any other. I walked into the office with a coffee in one hand and my phone in the other, replying to congratulatory emails about our upcoming Series C round. People smiled at me in the hallway, but their smiles felt off, too tight, too quick to fade. I shrugged it away and headed to the boardroom for what I assumed was a routine strategy meeting. The door was already closed. Through the glass, I saw Mark sitting at the head of the table, the seat that used to be mine by unspoken agreement. The board members were there, faces grim. My key card didn't work when I tried to swipe in. That was the first warning bell. Then the door opened, and our CFO stepped out, avoiding my eyes. "Alex," he muttered, "you shouldn't be here." "What's going on?" I asked, pushing past him. Mark stood up slowly, smoothing his tie like he was preparing for a photo shoot. He looked me straight in the eye, and for a split second I thought I saw regret flicker across his face. But it vanished as quickly as it came. "Alex," he said, voice calm and rehearsed, "the board has voted to remove you as CEO effective immediately. Allegations of financial misconduct have surfaced. Serious ones. Embezzlement, falsified reports. We had no choice." The room spun. "Embezzlement?" I repeated, my voice cracking. "That's insane. Show me the evidence." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were bank statements, emails, signatures that looked disturbingly like mine, transfers to accounts I'd never heard of. My stomach dropped. They were forgeries. Good ones, but forgeries nonetheless. "You know these aren't real," I said, looking around the table for someone, anyone, to back me up. But the investors stared at their laptops. The board members shifted uncomfortably. No one met my gaze. Mark sighed, playing the reluctant enforcer perfectly. "We have to protect the company, Alex. You understand? Protect the company from me. The person who had poured his soul into it for a decade." Security escorted me out while Mark watched from the boardroom window, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. As the elevator doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of him shaking hands with the lead investor, the same man who, just last week, had called me a visionary. Outside on the sidewalk, the California sun felt colder than ever. My phone buzzed with alerts, news articles already breaking the story. Tech CEO ousted amid fraud scandal. My name everywhere, dragged through the mud before I'd even had a chance to defend myself. I stood there for what felt like hours, watching employees stream in and out, none of them daring to look at me. That was when the rage started. Slow at first, like embers catching dry wood. It spread through my chest, hot and unstoppable. Mark hadn't just taken my company. He'd taken my life, my future, my trust. He'd looked me in the eye and lied after everything we'd been through together. As I walked away from the building that bore both our names on the lobby wall, one thought burned clearer than all the others. This wasn't over. He thought he'd won. He thought he'd buried me. But I wasn't done. Not even close. I was going to take everything back and make him feel every inch of the fall he'd forced on me. I don't remember the drive home that day. One minute I was standing on the sidewalk outside the office, the sun mocking me with its brightness, and the next I was sitting in my parked car in the underground garage of the apartment I shared with Sarah, staring at a dead phone screen. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't even unlock the door. When I finally made it upstairs, the place felt wrong, like I'd walked into someone else's life. Sarah was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner, humming along to whatever playlist she had on. She turned when she heard me, smiled bright and open, the way it always was when I came home early. "Hey, babe, you're back soon. Good meeting?" I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out. The words were stuck somewhere between rage and grief. She put the knife down, concern creasing her forehead. "Alex, what happened?" I told her. "Everything." The board vote, the forged documents, marks calm betrayal. I expected her to be furious on my behalf, to hug me and promise we'd fight this together. Instead, her face went pale. She sat down slowly at the kitchen island, staring at the marble countertop like it held answers. "This is bad," she whispered. "The news is already everywhere. Investors are pulling out. People are saying you stole millions." "I didn't," I said, voice raw. "You know I didn't." "I know," she said quickly, reaching for my hand. But her grip was loose, uncertain. "But perception is everything in this world. We have to be careful." For the first time that day, a tiny spark of hope flickered. We would get through this. We always had. But the next few weeks proved me wrong. The articles kept coming. Tech blogs, mainstream media, even late-night shows cracked jokes about the disgraced founder. My LinkedIn flooded with messages, some supportive, most silent. Old college friends unfollowed me. Vendors I'd worked with for years stopped returning calls. The startup world is small and ruthless. Guilt by association is real. Money became a problem faster than I expected. My company credit cards were frozen. Personal accounts linked to the business were flagged for investigation. Sarah's salary as a marketing director covered rent, but barely. We stopped going out. Stopped ordering takeout. I sold my watch, the one my dad gave me when we hit our first 1,000,000 users, just to cover groceries. Nights were the worst. I'd lie awake next to Sarah, listening to her breathe, replaying every moment with Mark in my head. The way he'd smiled when we closed our Series B. The toast he gave at my birthday last year, calling me the brother he never had. Every memory felt poisoned now. One evening, about a month in, I came home from a soul-crushing day of job applications, junior roles I was overqualified for, ghosted the moment they Googled my name, and found Sarah on the couch with her laptop. She closed it quickly when I walked in. "Who were you talking to?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "Just a recruiter," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Headhunter for a new role." Something cold settled in my stomach. "You're looking for a new job?" "Alex, my company's biggest client just pulled their contract because of the scandal. They cited reputational risk. I can't lose my job too. We need stability." I nodded, swallowing the hurt. Right, stability. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. A week later, she sat me down after dinner. "I think I should move out for a while," she said quietly. "Stay with my sister." I stared at her, the room tilting again. "You're leaving?" "Not leaving you," she corrected, tears in her eyes. "Just giving us space. This is consuming you, Alex. You're angry all the time. You barely sleep. I can't watch you destroy yourself." "Destroy myself," my voice rose despite my efforts. "Mark destroyed me. He took everything. And now you're walking away too?" "That's not fair," she whispered. "I stood by you through every launch, every crisis. But this, I don't know if you're coming back from this, and I can't go down with you." She packed that night. I didn't help. I sat on the bedroom floor, surrounded by boxes of old pitch decks and awards I'd won, feeling like a stranger in my own life. When she kissed my forehead goodbye the next morning, she said, "I hope you find your way through this. I really do." The door clicked shut behind her, and the apartment went dead silent. That was the night I hit bottom. I didn't eat for days, didn't shower. Just sat in the dark, scrolling through old photos on my laptop. Launch parties, investor dinners, Mark and me grinning like idiots on magazine covers. I drank whatever alcohol was left in the cabinet. At one point, I almost called him. Almost begged for an explanation. But then, in the haze of a 3 a.m. insomnia spiral, I opened our old shared drive. Force of habit. Most folders were locked now, access revoked, but one backup directory from 6 months ago was still there. I clicked through financial reports out of muscle memory, and that's when I saw it. A transfer I didn't recognize. Then another. Small at first, disguised as vendor payments, but routed through shell companies. Dates that lined up with Mark's solo business trips to the Caymans. My heart started pounding, not from despair this time, but from something sharper. He hadn't just framed me. He'd been stealing for months, building his escape hatch while smiling to my face. I closed the laptop slowly, the fog in my mind clearing for the first time since the betrayal. The grief was still there, the loneliness, the rage. But now it had direction. I wasn't going to stay buried. I was going to dig my way out and drag him down with me. The first real spark of hope came on a rainy afternoon in a rundown coffee shop on the edge of the city, far from anyone who might recognize me. I sat in a corner booth, nursing a black coffee that had gone cold hours ago, staring at printouts of those suspicious transfers I'd found in the old backup drive. My hands still shook sometimes when I thought too hard about everything I'd lost, but now the shaking came with purpose. I knew I couldn't just storm into a lawyer's office with a handful of screenshots and expect the world to right itself. Mark had covered his tracks well. Shell companies, layered transactions, forged signatures that even fooled the auditors. A direct legal fight would take years and millions I didn't have. He'd win by outlasting me. No. I needed something sharper. Something that would hit him where it hurt most. His reputation. His investors. His carefully curated image as the brilliant, trustworthy visionary. That's when I started researching. Not the flashy revenge fantasies you see in movies, but the quiet, methodical kind. Corporate whistleblower cases. Digital forensics. How fraud gets exposed when the public finally sees the receipts. I spent weeks in libraries and incognito browser tabs, teaching myself things I never thought I'd need to know. How to safely back up evidence without leaving digital fingerprints. How to spot patterns in offshore accounts. How to verify if a document had been altered. I bought burner phones, created anonymous email accounts, and learned to use encrypted messaging apps like they were second nature. One night, bleary-eyed at 4 a.m., I found an old contact in my inbox. Elena, a former senior engineer who'd left the company 6 months before the coup. She'd always been sharp, quietly furious about the way Mark treated the team. I sent her a cautious message from a new account. Do you still have access to any old repos or financial logs? Her reply came faster than I expected. Meet me tomorrow. Same coffee shop you used to drag us to for late-night debugging sessions. When she walked in, she looked different. Hair shorter, eyes harder, but the hug she gave me was genuine. No pity, just anger on my behalf. He screwed over a lot of us, she said quietly after we sat down. Not just you. Forced out anyone who asked too many questions about the budget. I saved everything I could before I left. She slid a USB drive across the table. My pulse raced as I plugged it into my laptop later that night. Inside were emails, dozens of them. Mark instructing accounting to reroute funds, dismissing concerns, threatening jobs. There were Slack exports showing him deleting messages after the fact. And most damning, a recording of a late-night call where he laughed about how easy it would be to pin everything on me if the investors ever got suspicious. Hearing his voice like that, casual, arrogant, already planning my downfall, made my blood boil all over again. But this time the rage felt clean. Useful. Elena wasn't the only one. Over the next few months, I reached out carefully to others who'd been pushed out or marginalized. A product manager who'd been fired for performance issues after questioning expense reports. A junior dev who'd seen Mark log into systems with admin credentials he shouldn't have had. One by one, they came forward with pieces of the puzzle. We formed a loose network, communicating only through secure channels, never meeting in groups larger than 2. We called ourselves nothing. No dramatic name, just people who'd been burned and wanted the truth out. The plan started taking shape. The company's annual gala was 6 months away, the biggest event in the tech calendar. Every major investor, journalist, and partner would be there. Mark was set to announce a massive new funding round on stage, complete with a glossy presentation about the company's transparent, ethical future. Perfect. We would hijack that moment. Not with violence or chaos, but with undeniable proof projected on every screen in the venue. Emails, bank records, timestamps, audio, everything cross-referenced and verifiable. But the closer we got, the more dangerous it became. I started noticing things. A car that seemed to linger too long outside my apartment building. Anonymous emails warning me to let the past stay in the past. Once, my new laptop, bought with cash, never connected to my old accounts, froze and displayed a single line. We see you. Mark knew someone was digging. Maybe not that it was me, but he was getting paranoid. Hiring private security, sweeping offices for bugs, questioning remaining staff about disloyalty. Elena texted me one night. He asked about you today in the all hands, said you were unstable and that anyone in contact with you should report it to HR. Be careful. I stared at the message for a long time. Careful wasn't going to cut it anymore. I had come too far, gathered too much. The evidence was airtight now, enough to destroy him if it saw daylight. There was no turning back. The gala was coming. The clock was ticking. And for the first time since that security guard put his hand on my shoulder and escorted me out, I felt something stronger than despair. I felt ready. The night of the gala arrived like a fever dream. I stood in the dimly lit bathroom of a cheap motel 2 miles from the venue, staring at my reflection under flickering fluorescent light. The man looking back at me barely resembled the Alex Thompson who used to walk red carpets and keynote conferences. My hair was cropped short and dyed a nondescript brown. A fake beard itched against my jaw. Coloured contacts turned my eyes from blue to muddy hazel. The caterer's uniform, black pants, white shirt, crisp vest, hung loosely on a frame that had lost 15 pounds since the fall. I practiced my name in the mirror, over and over, until it felt real. Name's Javier Ruiz. Been with Elite Catering for 3 years. Badge number 1847. Elena had pulled strings through a friend of a friend to get me on the crew. No background check deep enough to flag me, just a forged ID and a cash tip to the supervisor. The plan was simple on paper. Slip in with the evening shift, plant a small wireless transmitter near the AV booth, and trigger the broadcast from a laptop outside the venue when Mark took the stage. Simple. Right. I arrived at the loading dock just after sunset, blending into the swarm of black-clad staff hauling trays of champagne flutes and silver-domed plates. The air smelled of garlic butter and money. No one gave me a second glance as I wheeled a cart of linens through the service corridors. My heart hammered so hard I was sure someone would hear it over the clatter of dishes. The venue was the Grand Regency Ballroom. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. I'd been here before, back when I was the one shaking hands with venture capitalists and posing for TechCrunch photos. Tonight I was invisible, just another faceless body keeping the champagne cold. I spotted Mark almost immediately. He was in the center of the pre-dinner cocktail hour, surrounded by the usual circle of admirers. Tailored tuxedo, easy smile, gesturing animatedly as he told some story that had everyone laughing. He looked triumphant, like a king holding court in the kingdom he'd stolen. For a moment I forgot to breathe. The rage surged so violently I had to grip the edge of a service table to steady myself. My vision narrowed to just him, his voice carrying over the crowd, the way he clapped an investor on the back, the casual arrogance in every movement. Keep moving, I told myself. Don't blow it now. I pushed deeper into the ballroom, past clusters of tech royalty I used to call colleagues. A few faces I recognized glanced my way, but none registered recognition. Good. The disguise held. The AV booth was tucked behind a velvet curtain near the stage. I timed my approach with a rush of servers clearing appetizers. Chaos was cover. Kneeling as if adjusting a fallen napkin, I slid the transmitter, a tiny black box no bigger than a matchbook, under the lip of the control console. It clicked into place with a soft magnetic snap. Signal strength green on my burner phone. Perfect. I was backing away when a hand landed heavily on my shoulder. Hey, you, new guy. My blood froze. I turned slowly. A burly security supervisor in a dark suit stared down at me, eyes narrowed. You're not on my roster for this section. Let me see your badge. Time slowed. I forced a calm smile, lifting the lanyard clipped to my vest. Javier Ruiz, sir. Elite Catering. They shifted me from Ballroom B last minute. He scanned the badge with a handheld reader. The device beeped, green light. Elena's contact had come through. He grunted. Stay in your assigned zone next time. VIPs only beyond this point. Yes, sir. Won't happen again. He moved on, and I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Too close. I spent the next hour playing the part, refilling water glasses, clearing empty plates, keeping my head down. Every minute dragged like an hour. I watched Mark work the room, watched investors hang on his every word, watched him glance occasionally toward the stage like a man about to claim his crown. At 8:45 p.m., the lights dimmed for the main presentation. Guests took their seats. Mark stepped up to the podium, that practiced smile wider than ever. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice smooth and confident, "tonight marks the beginning of an extraordinary new chapter." I slipped out a side exit into the cool night air, heart pounding harder than it had inside. In the shadows of the parking structure across the street, I opened my laptop on the hood of a rented van. The transmitter signal was strong. All files queued. Countdown set to trigger exactly when he reached the slide about unwavering integrity and transparency. I watched through binoculars as he built to his big reveal, the new funding round, the valuation that would make him untouchable. My finger hovered over the enter key. One press and everything would change. But in that final moment, doubt crashed in like a wave. What if the hack failed? What if security traced it back to me tonight? What if I went to prison for this, while he walked away with a slap on the wrist? I thought of Sarah's goodbye kiss, of the empty apartment, of the way Mark had looked me in the eye and lied without flinching. My hand stopped shaking. I pressed the key. Back inside, the massive screens behind Mark flickered once. Then the truth began to roll, and there was no turning back. I pressed the key, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Across the street, through the binoculars, I watched the massive screens behind Mark flicker once, twice, then bloom with the first slide I'd prepared. Not his polished graphics about growth and innovation, but a simple black background with white text, the truth about our leadership. The ballroom lights were still dimmed for the presentation, so every eye was on those screens. Mark's voice faltered mid-sentence. "And with this new round, we'll be positioned too." He stopped, turned, saw what everyone else was seeing. The first email appeared, a chain from 18 months ago. Mark instructing the CFO to move $2 million into an unmarked account for strategic flexibility. The CFO pushing back. Mark overriding him with a single line, "Do it, or start updating your resume." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones came out. Cameras flashed. Mark's face on the podium went from confident to confused to pale in seconds. He tapped the clicker frantically, trying to advance, trying to regain control. Nothing happened. My transmitter had locked the system. Next slide. Bank transfer records. Cayman Islands, shell companies with directors I'd never heard of. Dates that lined up perfectly with the vendor payments he'd used to siphon funds. I could see investors in the front row leaning forward, then back, expressions shifting from curiosity to disgust. One prominent VC, I recognized him immediately, stood up and started walking toward the exit. Others followed. Mark grabbed the microphone, voice cracking now. This is a hack, a malicious attack. We're looking into it right now. Please remain calm." But the slides kept coming. Audio next. His own voice, recorded from that late-night call Elena had saved. "If anyone starts asking questions, we have the perfect scapegoat. Alex has signature authority on everything. A few forged docs, and he takes the fall. Easy." The room erupted. Shouts, accusations. Someone yelled, "You son of a bitch!" A glass shattered somewhere. Security rushed the stage, but they didn't know who to protect him from. The audience or the truth. I lowered the binoculars, hands trembling. Not from fear this time, but from the sheer force of what I'd just unleashed. My burner phone buzzed. "Elena, it's working. Police are here, reporters too. Get out now." But I couldn't move yet. I had to see it through. Chaos spilled out of the ballroom doors minutes later. Guests pouring into the lobby, some furious, some shell-shocked. Mark emerged, flanked by 2 security guards, face slick with sweat, tie askew. He scanned the crowd wildly, like a cornered animal. That's when he saw me. I was standing just outside the main entrance, under the awning, no longer in the caterer's uniform. I'd changed in the van. Just jeans, hoodie up, hands in pockets. Ordinary. Invisible again. But he knew. Our eyes locked across the distance. For a second, everything else faded. The sirens approaching, the flashing cameras, the angry voices. He pushed past his guards and strode toward me, face twisted with something between rage and disbelief. "Alex," he hissed when he was close enough, voice low so the gathering reporters wouldn't hear. "You did this." I didn't answer, just looked at him. He stepped closer, breath coming fast. "You think this makes you the hero? You just burned the company to the ground, thousands of jobs gone, because of your petty grudge." "My grudge?" My voice came out steadier than I expected. "You stole my life, Mark. You forged evidence. You framed me for your crimes. And now you're mad that the truth came out?" His eyes darted side to side, calculating. Then quieter. "We can fix this, together. I can spin it, say you were coerced, blackmailed, come back inside. We'll tell them it was a joint expose. You get your shares back. We both walk away clean." For a moment, just a moment, I saw the old Mark. The one who could talk his way out of anything. The one who'd convinced me years ago that we were unstoppable together. I almost laughed. "You still don't get it," I said. "This isn't about shares or the company. It's about what you did to me, to all of us." His mask slipped completely then. The charm vanished, replaced by pure venom. "You ungrateful bastard," he spat. "I carried you. You were nothing without me, and now you've destroyed everything we built." "No," I said quietly. "You did that the moment you decided I was expendable." Police cars pulled up then, lights flashing red and blue across his face. Officers stepped out, speaking into radios. One pointed toward us. Mark glanced over his shoulder, panic flashing in his eyes. He lunged forward suddenly, grabbing my jacket. "You'll go down for this too," he whispered fiercely. "Hacking. Trespassing. I'll make sure." An officer's voice cut through. "Mr. Riley, step away from him. We need to speak with you." Mark let go like I'd burned him, turned to face the police with that practiced smile again, hands raised innocently. "Of course, officers, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. They weren't buying it." Two of them moved forward, cuffs ready. As they read him his rights, he looked back at me one last time. No remorse, just pure hatred. The cuffs clicked shut. I watched them lead him to the car, cameras flashing around him like lightning, reporters shouting questions he couldn't answer. And for the first time in over a year, I breathed. Really breathed. The nightmare wasn't over. Lawsuits, investigations, fallout would drag on for months, maybe years. But in that moment, watching the man who'd taken everything from me finally face consequences, I felt something I hadn't felt since the day I was escorted out of my own company. Justice. Not perfect, not clean, but real. And it was only the beginning. The days after the gala blurred into a storm of noise and light. I didn't sleep that first night. I drove aimlessly through the city until dawn, radio off, windows down, letting the cold air slap me awake. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mark's face as the cuffs closed, the shock, the hatred, the moment he realized it was truly over. By morning, the story was everywhere. Front page of every tech site, trending on every platform, leading the evening news. Tech founder exposed in dramatic gala hack. CEO arrested for fraud. My name was mentioned, carefully at first, a former co-founder and whistleblower. Then, as the evidence held up under scrutiny, the narrative shifted. Wronged partner delivers justice. The revenge that toppled an empire. Reporters camped outside my apartment building. My burner phone exploded with messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Old classmates, distant cousins, even investors who'd once turned their backs. Some wanted interviews. Some wanted forgiveness. A few just wanted to say they'd always believed in me. I didn't answer any of them. Not yet. The legal machinery kicked into gear fast. Federal investigators seized servers. The board resigned en masse. The company, our company, was placed under emergency receivership. Thousands of employees faced layoffs, and every headline reminded me of that cost. Mark's voice echoed in my head. You burned it all down. He wasn't entirely wrong. But the evidence was ironclad. Within weeks, Mark was indicted on multiple counts: wire fraud, securities fraud, conspiracy. His bail was denied after prosecutors argued flight risk. Those offshore accounts looked a lot like escape plans now. I watched the courtroom footage on mute. Him in an orange jumpsuit, thinner, eyes hollow, no longer the golden boy. I testified at the preliminary hearing. Walking into that room and seeing him across the table was harder than I expected. He wouldn't look at me until the prosecutor played the audio of him laughing about framing me. Then he stared, long, hard, burning with something that wasn't quite remorse. When it was over, a reporter outside asked if I felt vindicated. I said, I feel tired, and I did. The civil suits came next. Whistleblower protections shielded me from the worst, but there were still depositions, was endless questions, nights poring over documents again. I won back a portion of my equity, enough to never worry about money again, but the company itself was gutted, sold off in pieces to competitors. The name we'd chosen together in that garage all those years ago was retired, erased from app stores and office signs. Sarah reached out once. A text, 3 months after the gala. Can we talk? We met at the same coffee shop where I'd first connected with Elena. She looked good. New job, new apartment, new life. She apologized for leaving when I needed her most. I apologized for becoming someone she couldn't stay for. We didn't get back together. Some fractures don't heal clean, but we parted without bitterness. That was something. Slowly, the noise faded. The headlines moved on to the next scandal. I moved out of the city to a quiet coastal town a few hours north. Rented a small house with a deck overlooking the ocean. Started running every morning at sunrise. The rhythm of feet on pavement became my therapy. 1 year after the gala, I launched a new company, small, deliberate, built on principles I wished we'd never abandoned the first time. Ethical AI tools for non-profits. No venture capital, no hype, just good work with good people. Elena joined as CTO. A few others from the old network came too. We kept it under 20 employees. No one person held too much power. I mentored kids from underserved schools on weekends, teaching them to code. Told them the unglamorous truths. Success isn't linear, loyalty isn't guaranteed, and revenge, even when justified, takes more than it gives back. Sometimes, late at night, I still dream about that garage. Mark and me, 22 and invincible, arguing over variable names and dreaming bigger than we had any right to. I wake up angry all over again, or sad. Sometimes both. Justice came, but it didn't erase the scars. It didn't bring back the years lost, or the trust I used to have in people, or the version of myself that believed the world was mostly fair. What it did give me was space to rebuild. Smaller, wiser, slower. On the 2nd anniversary of the gala, I got a letter forwarded from my old address. No return label. Prison postmark. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Handwriting I recognized instantly. Alex, you won. Congratulations. I hate you for it. I always will. But some nights I think about that garage too. About how we started with nothing and built something real. I threw it away. I know that now. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. Just know that every day in here, I live with what I did. I read it 3 times, then folded it neatly and slipped it into a drawer. I didn't write back. Some stories don't need epilogues. I walked out to the deck that evening, coffee in hand, and watched the sun sink into the Pacific. The waves crashed steady and endless below. The fire that had burned in me for so long was finally banked, down to embers, warm but no longer consuming. I had survived the fall. I had clawed my way back, and now at last I was ready to live again.